A wealthy CEO walks away from the woman he loves on the worst possible day, and 6 years later he finds out exactly what that decision cost him. Naomi Sinclair was standing at the window of the hotel suite, watching the gray October sky over Vancouver when her maid of honor, Jess, knocked on the bathroom door for the third time that morning. "He's not here yet," Jess said carefully. "The way you say something when you already know the answer, but hope saying it out loud will change things." Naomi turned from the window. Her dress was white silk, fitted at the waist, simple in the way only expensive things can be. She'd chosen it because Colin said she wasn't a fuss and flowers kind of woman. He'd said that like it was a compliment. "What time is it?" she asked. 2:47. The ceremony was supposed to start at 2. She sat down on the edge of the bed. Not because she felt faint, not because her legs were shaking. She sat down because sometimes the body makes a decision but the mind catches up and her body already knew. The hotel coordinator, a woman named Barb with a walkie-talkie and a clipboard, came in at 3:15 to say that Colin Merritt had sent a message through his assistant. Not his personal cell, his assistant. The message was 4 sentences long. He was sorry. This wasn't the right time. He hoped she would understand. He would have someone arrange for the gifts to be returned. Naomi read it twice. Then she folded the paper and slipped it into her clutch. She thanked Barb. She asked Jess to go let the guests know. She did not cry in front of anyone. She waited until the room cleared, and then she sat back down on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor for a very long time. Colin Ashford Merritt was 34 years old, the second son of a Vancouver real estate dynasty, and the only person in his family who had actually built something from scratch. He'd started his own development firm at 27 and turned it into one of the most profitable mid-size companies in Western Canada before he was 31. His father admired this. His mother, Dorothea, thought it was unnecessary. They already had money. Why did he need to make more of his own? The answer was that Colin had always needed things to be his, not inherited, not handed, his. Naomi had been his too, for almost 3 years. He'd met her at a fundraiser for the Children's Hospital. She was there on behalf of the non-profit where she worked. He was there because his mother had insisted. She was the only person in the room who hadn't looked impressed when someone introduced him by name. He'd spent the rest of the night trying to get her attention. He thought he'd won. He thought the wedding would be just one more thing in a long line of things he'd figured out how to get. What he hadn't figured on was Dorothea. His mother had come to him the night before the wedding. She sat in the chair across from him in his apartment. Back straight, pearls at her throat, the particular stillness she wore when she'd already decided something and was only waiting to tell him. And she said she had concerns. She called them concerns. What she meant was ultimatums. Naomi came from nothing, Dorothea said. Not in a cruel way, just factually. Her mother had worked 2 jobs. Her father had left when she was 7. She had student debt, she had rented apartments and secondhand furniture and a LinkedIn profile that listed her as a program coordinator, not even a director. What would that look like? Colin had said it didn't matter what it looked like. His mother had said, "I will restructure the family trust. You will lose your shares in Merritt Properties. Your brothers will receive your portion." He'd sat with that for a long time after she left. He told himself he was protecting Naomi from a family that would never accept her. He told himself she deserved someone without this kind of baggage. He told himself a lot of things in the hours between midnight and 2 in the afternoon, and all of them were easier than the truth, which was that he was afraid. He was 34 years old, and he was afraid of his mother, and he didn't know how to say that to anyone. So he sent the message through his assistant, and he sat in his car in the parkade 3 blocks from the hotel and watched his phone until Naomi stopped calling. She left Vancouver 2 weeks later. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. She transferred within her nonprofit to their Halifax office, packed 2 suitcases and a box of books, and got on a plane. She didn't contact Colin. She didn't contact Dorothea. She blocked numbers, deleted photos, and started the process of deciding how she wanted to be now that this particular version of her life had ended. She was 31 years old. She was good at her job. She told herself, in the dark of a new apartment that smelled like someone else's cooking, going to be fine. She found out she was pregnant 6 weeks after arriving in Halifax. Not 1 baby, 2. The obstetrician had used the word twins in such a calm, ordinary way that Naomi had actually laughed, a short, stunned sound that she immediately covered with her hand. She lay awake for 3 nights straight. She ran the numbers on her salary. She called Jess, who had moved to Toronto for a new job. and cried properly for the first time since the wedding. She researched single parenthood, parental leave in Nova Scotia, daycare waitlists, and whether you could fit 2 infant car seats in the back of a Honda Civic. She did not call Colin. That decision came to her not with anguish but with a kind of settled clarity. He had sent a 4-sentence message through an assistant. Whatever these children were going to need, whatever kind of father they deserved, it was not a man who communicated through intermediaries on what should have been the most important day of his life. Her daughter arrived first. Naomi named her Willa. Her son came 2 minutes later. She named him Sam. They were born in a Halifax hospital on a Tuesday in July, and Naomi held both of them at once for the first time when the room was quiet and the lights were low, and she understood then what the word enough really meant. 6 years passed, not easily. Nothing about those years was easy, but solidly. Naomi made a life that was genuinely, unselfconsciously hers. She was promoted twice at the nonprofit, and eventually moved to their national office in Ottawa, a city she came to love for reasons that had nothing to do with anyone else. She found a house she could almost afford, a school the kids adored, a small tight circle of friends who knew exactly how strong her coffee had to be. Willa was 6 now, loud and relentlessly curious, the kind of child who asked why about everything and wasn't satisfied with vague answers. Sam was 6 too. Quieter, more careful, with a habit of watching people before he spoke to them that everyone said he must have gotten from his mother. Naomi had learned not to think about what else he might have gotten from his father. She had not told Colin about the children. She had not gone looking for him online, had not read the business articles that sometimes mentioned his name, had not asked Jess, who still lived in Toronto and probably could have found out. The children knew they had a father. She had not lied to them about that. She had said, when they were old enough to ask, that sometimes people and families take shapes that don't look the way you expect, and that the only person who had chosen them every single day was her. Willa had accepted this with the practical efficiency she applied to most things. Sam had listened and then asked if they could have grilled cheese for dinner. It was fine. It was enough. And then, on an ordinary Friday morning in October, 6 years almost to the week since the hotel room and the paper note and Barb and her clipboard, Naomi was standing outside Sam and Willa's school at pickup, holding 2 apple juice boxes and her phone, and she looked up and saw Colin Merritt standing 15 meters away. He was looking at her, like someone had knocked the air out of him. She didn't move. Her first instinct was to look around for the kids, to locate them, to physically place herself between them and whatever was about to happen. But they hadn't come out of the building yet, and so she stood there, juice boxes in hand, and watched Colin cross the pavement toward her. He looked older. Not worse, just older. There were lines at the corners of his eyes that hadn't been there before. He was wearing a dark coat, no tie, and he had the expression of a man who has just realized, mid-step, that he is completely unprepared for what is happening. "Naomi," he said. "Colin, what are you?" He stopped, looked at the school, at the clusters of parents, at the juice boxes in her hands. The specific involuntary arithmetic of it was visible on his face. "You have kids," he said, and it was to question. "Yes. How old?" She held his gaze. 6. Something moved across his face, a rearrangement, a realization pressing against something else, trying to fit. "Are they?" His voice dropped. "Are they mine?" The doors of the school opened, the afternoon flood of children began, and Willa came out first the way she always did, in a rush, backpack barely zipped, talking before she'd even spotted Naomi. And then Sam, 2 steps behind, scanning the crowd until he found her. Both of them stopped when they saw the man standing next to their mother. Willa looked at him with the unfiltered directness she brought to everything. "Who are you?" Colin looked down at her. He opened his mouth, closed it. "He's someone Mum knows," Naomi said very carefully, "from a long time ago." She put a juice box in each of their hands. "Mum needs 1 minute, okay? Just wait by the fence." They went, though Willa's eyes stayed on Colin the entire way. Naomi turned back to him. His face was pale. "Yes," she said quietly, "they are." The silence between them was a particular kind of heavy. Not awkward, past awkward, too freighted for that. "Why didn't you? You sent a note through your assistant," she said. Her voice was steady. She had not planned this conversation, but she found that the words came without effort, because she'd had versions of it in her head for 6 years. "You couldn't even call me yourself. I wasn't going to give you children that you could also just decide weren't convenient. That's not." He stopped, pressed a hand over his mouth briefly. "That's not fair." "I know," she said. "A lot of things aren't fair." He looked over at the fence where Willa was watching them with undisguised suspicion, and Sam was watching with that patient, measuring look. He looked like he might say something. Instead, he just stood there. "I'm not asking anything from you right now," Naomi said, "but I need you to know that they're real children who have a whole life, and you don't get to walk into the middle of it because it's convenient for you." She picked up her bag from the ground, called to Willa and Sam, and walked away without looking back. She spent the drive home telling herself she was fine. She was not entirely fine. Colin found out she worked at the National Councils on Family Services. He was not proud of how he found out. A contact, a favor called in, information he had no right to. He knew that. He went to her building anyway on a Tuesday morning and waited in the lobby until she came through the doors. Naomi stopped when she saw him. The look on her face was not surprise exactly. It was something closer to exhaustion. "You need to not do this," she said. "I know." He fell into step beside her. "I'll stop after today. I just need," he exhaled. "I need you to tell me what to do. I've been trying to figure out what the right thing is, and I can't." "You had 6 years to figure out the right thing," she said without slowing down. "You didn't. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. Those are different." He didn't have an answer for that. She turned to face him at the corner. "What do you actually want, Colin?" "I want to know them," he said. "I want the chance to what? Be their father? You don't know what that means. You don't know anything about them." Her voice was tight but controlled. "Willa is afraid of moths. Sam can't sleep unless there's a nightlight shaped like a moon that I found at a garage sale in 2020. They like the same songs and they hate the same foods and they've never needed you. Not once. Because I made sure they didn't." He said nothing. "If I give you access to them and you decide again, for whatever reason, your mother, your company, your inheritance, that it's too complicated, they will pay for that." She looked at him steadily. "They're 6 years old. They're not collateral." "I know," he said quietly. "Do you?" He met her eyes. "I'm not going anywhere. I made the worst decision of my life when I was too afraid to make a different one, and I'm not asking you to forgive that. But I'm asking for a chance. Not because it's easy, because I want to be different." She stood there for a long moment. "I'll think about it," she said finally, and she walked inside. She talked to Jess that night, long enough that her tea went cold and she had to microwave it twice. Jess, who had known Colin during those years, who had stood in that hotel room and said, "He loves you, Claire, he's just..." No. Not Claire. That was someone else. Someone older now. Jess listened and asked practical questions, and then said, at the end, "What do the kids deserve, Nav? Not him. Not you. Them." Naomi didn't sleep much. She reached out to a family lawyer named Bridget who a colleague had recommended. She wanted to understand what she was walking into before she walked in. Bridget was direct and smart and did not sugarcoat things. She said, if he decided to pursue legal access, he would likely be granted some. She said, it would be better for the children if Naomi had some control over how that happened rather than having a court impose it. She said, this is not uncommon and you don't have to do it alone. Naomi went home and stood outside the kids' room for a few minutes, listening to the particular quiet of 2 6-year-olds asleep. Then she called Colin. She set conditions. He agreed to all of them, without negotiating, which she had not expected. Supervised visits only, at locations she chose. No gifts, no grand gestures. He would come, spend time with the children, leave when she said it was time. He would not introduce himself as their father until she agreed it was appropriate. He showed up the following Saturday at a park near her house, empty-handed and 5 minutes early. He was bad at it, at first. Not mean, not dismissive, just unpracticed. He didn't know how to get down to a 6-year-old's level, literally or otherwise. He asked them what grade they were in and they told him grade 1 and he nodded, like this was information he was going to study later. Willa stared at him. Sam hung back. But he kept coming, every Saturday. He didn't cancel, didn't reschedule, didn't send his assistant in his place. He came himself every single week, and he learned things. He learned that Willa wanted to be talked to like a small adult and hated being condescended to. He learned that Sam opened up through activity, not conversation. If you kicked a ball back and forth, he'd talk. If you sat across a table and asked him questions, he'd close like a door. He learned the names of their friends, their teachers. The ongoing saga of a girl in Willa's class named Maeve, who had allegedly stolen Willa's glitter pencil and never returned it. About 6 weeks in, Colin showed up with a soccer ball. Not as a gift. He'd been careful about that. He just had it under his arm. He looked at Sam and said, I heard you've been working on your left foot. Want to try something? Sam looked at his mother. Naomi gave a small nod. They spent 45 minutes on the grass, while Willa narrated commentary from the sideline in a voice that was already disturbingly accurate to a professional sports broadcaster. Sam scored a goal, and Colin lifted him off the ground, and they were both laughing, and Naomi stood 20 feet away, with her arms crossed and her throat tight. She allowed herself to feel it for exactly 30 seconds. Then she uncrossed her arms and walked over to join them. What she hadn't anticipated was Dorothea. Colin's mother had apparently heard, through the network of people through which women like Dorothea Merritt hear things, that Colin was spending time in Ottawa with a woman and children. She had said nothing to Colin directly. What she'd done instead was contact the family law firm that the Merritts had retained for 30 years, which in turn had reached out to Bridget on Naomi's behalf, with a letter suggesting that Naomi consider a formal settlement arrangement rather than an informal access agreement. It was worded diplomatically. The meaning was not diplomatic. The meaning was, we are watching. We are prepared. Do not get comfortable. Naomi sat in Bridget's office and read the letter twice. This isn't from Colin, Bridget said carefully. I know. Do you want to tell him about it? Not yet. She wanted to understand what she was dealing with first. She did some asking around, discreetly, through people who knew the Ottawa legal community, and what she learned about the Merritt family's legal history was not reassuring. Dorothea had a long record of making things difficult for people who complicated her plans. There had been a settlement with a former employee, a withdrawn custody challenge involving Colin's older brother, a non-disclosure agreement signed by someone whose name she couldn't find anywhere afterward. Naomi brought all of this to Bridget. Bridget said, "If Dorothea tries anything formal, we're ready. But what matters right now is what Colin does." Naomi told Colin about the letter that Saturday. She handed him a copy across the picnic table, while the kids were on the climbing structure behind them. He read it. She watched his face. "I didn't know about this," he said. "I know. She doesn't have the right to—" "No, she doesn't." Naomi waited. "What are you going to do?" He set the letter down. He looked at his kids. His kids, because that was what they were, whether any of them had named it yet. Climbing and shouting and utterly unbothered by everything that was happening 20 meters away. He looked at them for a long time. "I'm going to call my lawyer," he said. "And then I'm going to call my mother and tell her what?" He met Naomi's eyes. "That this is not her decision." For the first time in a long time, she believed him. The conversation with Dorothea did not go gently. Colin told Naomi afterward, in the even, careful way of someone who has just survived something, that his mother had not taken it well. That she had said the things Dorothea always said. About reputation, about legacy, about what things looked like. That she had invoked the trust, the shares, all of the levers she had always used. He had told her that the children existed regardless of what she decided to do with any of it. That he was going to be in their lives. That if she wanted to be part of a family that included them, that possibility was open to her. But that the decision to be in their lives was not up for negotiation and was not hers to make. Dorothea had not spoken to him for 3 weeks after that. Naomi had not expected to feel anything about this particular development. She felt something anyway, watching Colin show up every Saturday through those 3 weeks, arriving, present, undeterred, in a way she had never seen him be before. She didn't say anything about it, but she noticed. The legal situation quieted. Bridget said Dorothea's lawyers had gone dormant, which either meant she'd backed off or was regrouping. Naomi kept her guard up. She also kept making room. One evening in late March, Naomi came home from a work event to find a sticky note on her front door. It was from the neighbor who watched the kids sometimes. They were both fine, went to bed without a fuss. Sorry, her handwriting was a mess. Colin had dropped them off. He'd stayed until the sitter arrived. The note said he'd made them scrambled eggs for dinner because the sitter said there was nothing easy to cook and he'd found eggs. Naomi stood on her front steps in her coat and read the note again. She went inside. The kitchen was clean. There were 2 plates in the dish rack. On the counter, there was a post-it in handwriting she recognized. Eggs were overcooked, sorry. S said they were good anyway. W said they'll do. C. She laughed. Quietly, alone in her kitchen at 9:30 at night, she laughed. She put the post-it in the junk drawer. She didn't examine why. Spring came. The kids finished grade 1. Willa won a spelling bee that she accepted with the precise graciousness of someone who had never genuinely doubted she'd win. Sam got a star from his teacher on a drawing of a blue whale that he later gave to Colin, who kept it. Naomi found out because Sam mentioned it without fanfare, the way kids mention things that matter to them, and she'd had to look away for a moment. In June, Colin asked if they could talk. Not in front of the kids, just the two of them. She said yes. They met at a coffee shop near the Rideau Canal on a Thursday evening. He got there first. He was already at the table when she walked in, turning a coffee cup in his hands, and he looked up when she sat down with an expression she didn't know how to read yet but was starting to. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, "that I should have told you a long time ago." She waited. "My mother didn't just ask me not to marry you," he said. "She gave me an ultimatum. I've told you that part. What I didn't tell you was that I'd already decided to go through with the wedding anyway." He looked at his coffee. "I changed my mind the morning of, not because of her, because I was scared." He looked up. "Of you, of how much it mattered, of being the kind of person who got everything he wanted and then had to figure out what came next." He paused. "I was 34 years old and I didn't know how to be happy without being afraid of losing it, so I made sure I'd lose it." Naomi held very still. "I'm not saying this to make you feel sorry for me," he continued. "I'm saying it because you deserve the actual truth. Not the version I've been giving myself for 6 years." He exhaled. "I was a coward, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the hotel room and the 4 sentences and all of it. I'm sorry for the 6 years you did alone." The canal was visible through the window. The evening light was doing something quiet and gold to everything outside. "I don't know what to do with that," she said honestly. "You don't have to do anything with it," he said. "I just needed you to have it." She nodded slowly. "Are you?" She stopped. Started again. "Are you going to keep showing up? When this gets harder, when the kids are older and it gets more complicated, are you going to keep being there?" "Yes," he said. "Not maybe. No, not maybe." She looked at him for a moment. Then she picked up her coffee cup. "Okay," she said, "then we figure out the rest as we go." He didn't smile. He looked like someone who'd just been given something he wasn't sure he'd earned, and knew it, and was going to be careful with it. "Yeah," he said. Okay, autumn arrived. The kids turned 7. Naomi made a cake that leaned slightly to the left, and Willa said it looked like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and Sam said that was just artistic, and they ate it in the backyard on a Sunday afternoon with Jess, who'd driven from Toronto, and Colin, who had driven from wherever he'd been that week, and a handful of small, loud friends who left cake smears on every surface. Colin did the dishes without being asked. Naomi came into the kitchen to find him already at the sink. She didn't say anything. She picked up a tea towel and started drying. They stood there for a while in the ordinary quiet of a kitchen after a party. Outside, Willa was directing Sam and 2 other kids in some kind of elaborate game that appeared to have rules only she fully understood. The afternoon light was going amber. "I'm glad you found that school," Colin said eventually. "It's a good school. I mean," he stopped. "I'm glad you were there that day. I'm glad you let me." He stopped again. Something in his face was carefully open. "I'm working on saying things directly. I'm not there yet." "I know," she said. She kept drying. He kept washing. Outside, Willa shrieked in triumph over something, and Sam's laugh carried through the window. That particular laugh, the surprised one. The one that sounded like joy arriving before he'd decided to let it. Naomi looked at her hands, then she looked at the window. "So am I," she said, "working on things." He glanced at her. She didn't look back, but she felt it. "Good," he said, and they kept going, both of them, together, figuring out what came next.